Welcome back to the Grow Wealth Experience podcast. Today, we have Hugh Zaretsky joining us for our show. He's a highly successful real estate investor, serial entrepreneur, and a sought-after educator who has trained over 12,000 entrepreneurs and real estate investors worldwide. Hugh started his career as an IT executive, and then 9/11 was a wake-up call for him, and he transitioned into real estate. He started investing in short-term rentals in 2005 and has also invested in longer-term rentals, single-family homes, as well as multi-family. He's a published author with Jack Canfield, Les Brown, and other notable names. And his latest book, The Launch Button, was an Amazon bestseller in 4 categories in the first week it was published. And we're going to be talking about this book today. So for all of my financial independence seekers, let's get ready to be inspired and gain valuable insights from Hugh's wealth of entrepreneurial wisdom. But before he joins us, I want to remind everyone to like or subscribe to the channel, whatever platform you may be listening to. We're all over the place: iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, whatever works for you. Make sure you like or subscribe. This is going to keep you informed of all these amazing guests we have, as well as help me, my channel. Welcome to the show, Hugh.
Thank you. Appreciate that introduction.
So let's start with your book. Your first chapter talks about a Black Swan events. Can we go a little deeper with that and then include in there your Black Swan event and how that influenced your financial philosophy?
Sure. So, I appreciate you having me on here. And as you said, hit the hearts, hit the likes, and make sure you turn the bells on whatever channel it is, so you'll know when these go live and everything like that. So she can keep bringing you amazing content with this. So for me, it's sort of a funny story that I even wrote a book because I can't spell or do grammar. Right. I did after my dad. My dad was a math teacher. My mom was an English teacher. I took after my dad and went into math and pushed into computers at an early age. And then always had the thought process after the 9/11 experience of writing the book and the story. And as I've trained lots of students, just being able to put that in there. And so with the Black Swan, what we talk about is most people don't realize as kids, while they're growing up, there are some financial black swans, like, the financial industry calls them, those major events that happen that transform the way we do things. It could have been, the housing market crash. It could have been COVID. There's all these different things in people's lives that transpire. And a lot of millennials don't want to own real estate in today's world or anything. And that's where Airbnb, right? Airbnb started, VRBO. You had all of the different ride sharing apps because people didn't want to take on financial debt because they saw their parents get super stressed out because of that. Right. And so for me, very influenced by my great grandmother that was in the Depression. And then my parents always struggled what I felt financially in the beginning because my dad was always working multiple jobs. So it was always seeing that hard work was the way to get there. And that's sort of what focused me. But he was totally against investments, the most conservative investor you'll ever meet. And so I'm the opposite, right? So we're either like our parents or we're the opposite.
Correct.
And so I invest in everything, So that was sort of the Black Swan event for me. And then 9/11 being another event, and the tech crash, the bubble crash of the 2000s there, right? And so that got me out of my corporate job. So there's lots of Black Swan events that affect us as we go along the process, but it's usually one that gets us started.
And how did that affect your financial philosophy?
Well, so seeing my dad struggle financially, like trying to raise a family of 3 kids, right, on one teacher's salary, I realized that, from that I needed to be more dynamic and go into the corporate world. And because I thought that's where you make the big bucks, because, uncles and stuff had made the big bucks in the corporate world, right? But I didn't realize, the housing crashes and the market crashes. I hadn't paid attention to that growing up. So that's where the big Black Swan events happened.
Right. And it's unfortunate that a lot of people have to wait for Black Swan events to get working towards their goals. You've helped a lot of people start businesses and move forward in their lives. What initial steps should aspiring entrepreneurs or people who want to leave their jobs, what initial steps should we be taking?
Sure. So a point that you just brought up is, unfortunately, a lot of people say traumas are bad. Sometimes traumas are good because they open a door, right? And a lot of people feel like I felt stuck at my corporate job. I had the good income, stock options, all of that, but I wasn't happy. So we have the glass ceiling there. And then a lot of people tie their lives and their happiness to their title at work. And so it's really hard for them to give that up and to restart, because it's sort of like giving up themselves or their family. So a lot of people talk about fire their boss. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of starting your side hustle. And with today's world, it's so much easier than when I started, right? Back in 2005, the internet wasn't like all over the place and you can learn anything you wanted. But nowadays you can. So you can start spending an hour or two just sort of laying that out. And truly, the crazy thing is most people truly don't know what makes them happy, right? They've never actually sat down and said, what makes me happy? Because they either got pushed into a career or a job. Somebody said, you do that well, and they went down that path and they end up somewhere. And that's why we have all those people having like midlife crises. All of a sudden they're like, what am I doing? For me, my trauma was 9/11. That gave me the wake up call. Right. I had the apartment I just moved to New York City 10 days beforehand. I had the apartment on the pool on the roof of the apartment building I lived in, the stock options, all the things. And I thought I was happy, but I wasn't.
You're comfortable.
Well, yeah, but I thought that's what it was, right? Like that was happiness. And all of a sudden, like life changed like that. And it was like, those people went to work with hopes and dreams and never got a chance to fulfill it. What do I really want to do? Because I was just floating on like a log on a river, getting pushed from side to side. Just whatever came up and was easy.
Real estate is your passion. How did you discover that it was your passion? What about it has made you invest in 186 units in 18 months, is it? 18 months, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought real estate was my passion, but it's really teaching and training investors and entrepreneurs to see like they can actually achieve their goals and dreams. But real estate was a tool for me. Like I never thought about investing in real estate. I fell backwards into it. Like after 9/11, I was looking for something real. I found some crazy real estate deals and started learning about it with a college friend and started doing that. And then I took a course to learn how to raise capital. They were like, hey, do you want to fly around the country and teach and train investors? You're good at this. And I was like, you could get paid to do that? So one of the rules I have for people is if something is 70 to 80% of what you want, say yes to it. So go ahead and write that down for your listeners. 70 to 80% of what you want. Because everybody's like, oh, that's not the perfect thing. That's not just right for me. It's never going to be. And sometimes what we think is right for us isn't. Right? We've had that one time where we're like, I got exactly what I wanted and it wasn't what I wanted. True. And so if it's 70 to 80%, we got to say yes, because that leads us to the next opportunity. And when we just start saying yes to those things, we find it. Now, if you're not sure of what you're passionate about, you got to try a bunch of different things, right? You just got to go out there and try some things. Like, a lot of people want to help people, which is awesome, but you also got to make money so you can help people. And so, like we were joking around, you were asking about the pictures behind me and the different things like that. Those are my snorkeling diving photos. And we were both connecting to that. And, I got into underwater photography. I didn't know I liked underwater photography, but I got into it because I just started doing different experiences. And sometimes that leads to the great next invention. Like I know somebody that started a pickleball company, right? As pickleball's all the rage. They didn't really like it. They started playing it. They're like, oh, we can make mobile. Right. And they started doing that. They started to find their passion. They're an accountant by day. They'd rather be, out there selling pickleball nets and courts and stuff. Right. Like, so we start to find our passions as we do things. And so that's the biggest thing. What do people like to do? If they can dive into that and see if there's actually a way to make money doing that.
And how about figuring out our why? You touch upon that in your book as well?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing that's going to get you out of bed. Right? Our why. And we're down, and I talk a lot about this on, everybody's great days, they keep going, but on their days, you're not really feeling like it. You got to know that why. You got to have what I call your CDAs, your consistent daily actions that's going to build your business. Just the minimum. It might be 3 phone calls. It might be writing 3 paragraphs for your book. It might be whatever it is that you're doing. Like, you just have to do that on your down days, and then that'll snap you out of it and you'll do more. On our good days, it's easy. Everybody wants to build their business, but when stress and life has you down, knowing your why really is that. And most people don't know what that is. Like, if I ask people, why are you doing what you're doing here? Most people will be like, I don't know. Like, what makes you happy? They're like, I don't know. Because unfortunately, most people haven't really thought about it. They've just gone through life.
What was one experience of yours? We talked about ups and downs of business you were talking about. What is the worst experience that you had as an entrepreneur? And did your why help you with that?
That's a good question. The worst experience I've had, because it could go in so many different directions. I think the hardest thing in becoming an entrepreneur is getting used to the big ups and downs. We call it the entrepreneur roller coaster.
Absolutely.
Like, so many people quit, like when they leave their jobs, they're used to that, every 2 weeks I get a paycheck, every 2 weeks I get a paycheck. But those ups and downs of the being an entrepreneur, I know I'd fired my boss, and when I left the corporate world, even love my parents to death, but they were concerned about me, not having benefits, not having all of those things. And then, so that was 2005, and then we hit the housing market of 2008. Right. And the company I left for ended up filing bankruptcy, not paying us for our last few weeks of speaking and training people. And all of a sudden, right. So we're in a housing market crash. We're in all of these things. And that's where, your relationships really come in. So, it was a bit of a dark place sitting there, and then just got a phone call from a friend that, hey, this company that I'm now speaking for needs a trainer in New York in 2 days. Can you do it? And it was just like, yep, I'm there. I was like, what's the product? What's the thing? We're helping real estate agents and investors. Great. Just give me like a crash course. And, so I talked to a lot of people. We now do a new training that's not in the book. It's called 1 + 1 = 1,000, on how to build bigger, deeper relationships faster. And that's another resource for you.
Relational capital is what I call it. What advice would you give on networking and building relational capital?
So the one thing I like networking events that I don't really like is the spammer, right? So a lot of people, so you go to a networking event and somebody just comes by, they ask you like 2 questions, like, oh, here's my card, I do mortgages, here's my card, I do this, here's my card, I do that.
That happened to me last night at an investor event. It shut me down and I said no.
Yeah. So I'm like, cool. Like, I do the cool story, bro, from Hawaii. It's like, cool story, bro. Might as well just throw that card in the trash, right? Like, if you're going to network, make sure you do it right. Make sure you're building the relationship. And you only, go there and get 3 to 5 people, and always serve first. So that's how I recently got invited, or last fall, I got invited to speak in Portugal at the first ever Humanity Summit on sustainable tourism.
Fantastic.
And there were 80 speakers from all around the globe. I knew one person there, and Nelson Mandela's great grandson was there as one of the speakers, and of course everybody wanted to talk to him. And in 3 days, we built a really deep relationship, to the fact that he invited me to South Africa and to go to his town and look at some properties with him. I built that relationship in 3 days by not even trying to
Sell.
Everybody else sell, not even that. Everybody else wanted something from him. Right? They're like, oh, can you come speak for our group? Oh, your message is great. Can you do this? I wouldn't even sell him my book. He got mad at me because I wouldn't sell him my book. I was like, no, I'm not selling you my. He's like, I see you going around with the book. Why haven't you tried to sell it to me? I'm like, I'm not gonna. I was like, I'll give it to you. I'll sign it and give it to you. And you bring me something, because he was coming to Canada. I was like, you bring me, something from South Africa worth $20. Right. And so that started the value exchange, that started those types of things. And we had a whole bunch of fun over those 3 days. And then when I got to visit him and his family in South Africa, but it's the value exchange, right? What are you bringing for that? How are you solving a problem for them? And then they open up their Rolodex, and we all have way more than 1,000 contacts in our phones. So I call it the new math, right? 1 + 1 = 1,000. If they like you and trust you, then they're going to open up their Rolodex. But if you just come in as a transactional, here's my card, I can provide you this service, I can do this. Like, I don't have 1,000 mortgage people that would, that I could send people to. Of course I do. But what would make you different from those 1,000 people if you're just coming in here shoving mortgage cards, agent cards, whatever it is? It's not building a relationship.
Absolutely. That is a very common mistake that new and even seasoned entrepreneurs and business people make. What other misconceptions or mistakes new entrepreneurs make? Can you give us 2 more?
Yeah, a lot of people. What?
And how do you address these mistakes?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it is common sense is not common, right? And so
For sure.
like, it's just hilarious. It's just like having a conversation. Like, this is not planned. We're just having a conversation. Being able to communicate is a huge standout in today's world. I was talking to a friend of mine last night. He's a bit younger, and he's like, people just don't know how to communicate in today's world. I don't know if it was the COVID shutdown, whatever it is, but our communication skills have gone way down. If you can just have a conversation with somebody, ask questions, truly get to know the person, right? They're going to want to do business with you over somebody else. But if you lead with your product, you lead with your service, you lead, I'm going to be able to save you money, I'm going to be able to do all these things, and you don't even know that I want that, right? Then it does no good. Because I'm not going to answer your call. I'm not going to want to do business with you because you don't know anything about me, right, or my students or my network, or what my mission is, right? So if you understand, if you're aligned on mission, vision, and value with somebody, then you don't even need contracts half the time. You can create agreements and do business together. I think that's the biggest mistake. A lot of people rush into partnerships, relationships, those types of things, and they're not core aligned on mission, vision, and values. Right. And so if you could get clear with that on that with somebody, your partner, and somebody's like, well, how long, you can build a relationship in 3 days. Other people, it takes me 2 years to build a relationship. It just depends on how much, proximity we are. And that's another big rule. Proximity, being around the people that you want to be around. Not today, it could be on Zoom, but just being around keeps you top of mind when opportunities come up, when things come up.
And this is online or offline regular contact, correct?
Just regular contact, right? Just, even a simple text message. Hey, how's it going? How are you? Right? There's a guy that just popped by our office. I haven't seen him in like 10 years, right? But, oh, I forgot. Oh, hey, there you are, right? Didn't know what you were up to.
Right. That's important in marketing too. When you're emailing people, you have to periodically do it. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the rule of proximity is simply that when you're around people and they see you, they build that trust, right? Oftentimes people say it takes 5 to 7 to 10 contacts before somebody wants to do business with you. And we see this all the time. Do the TV commercials, you see all the ads over and over and over, because it's just getting you that 5 to 7 times. And the best analogy I heard was with a song, right? You used to hear a song and you hate it, and then like you hear it by the 10th time you hear it, you start to sing along with it. You're like, oh, it's not so bad, and then you love it. And that's the same thing on the marketing side. If you're not staying in front of them, whether it's once a week, once every 2 weeks, whatever it happens to be, you're providing value and content, then they're going to go ahead and eventually buy your stuff, because now they've built the trust. If you're just selling them constantly, they're not going to build trust with you.
Correct. And how about the power of coaching and mentorship and surrounding yourself with the people you want to surround yourself with, as you were saying?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and like I coach a lot of people, and I'm not everybody's cup of tea for coaching, because I tell you how it is, right? Now, there's, oftentimes you need different coaches at different times of your life. Somebody that's just going to be there, give you a hug and say it's okay, and I'm okay, and we do that as well. But I'm also going to tell you, hey, here's the basic mistake that you're making. You may not like it, but it's the truth, and now that's how you can move forward. So I use the sports analogy. I grew up playing sports my entire life, any sport with a ball in it. Even though I don't like to run long distance, I will play any sport all day long, right? And so by doing that, we talked about, and I have a little saying over here. It's like, how many shots did you take today? Because if you want to be the Caitlin Clark, the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James of your sport, the Steph Curry, you've got to be taking shots, right? And oftentimes we get in our own way, or 6 inches up here to do that. And if you hire a coach, hire a mentor, or you have one at work and stuff, what I always tell people is don't give friction to them. They ask you to do something, do it. That's the biggest key. You can go back to Mr. Miyagi and paint the fence and wax on and wax off, right? With Daniel's son. He didn't know he was actually learning while he was going through those exercises, right? And sometimes your coaches, your mentors will have you do certain things, and these 6 inches stop people. They go, well, why should I do that? What am I going to get out of it? Why? And instead of just going and doing it, then they see the results, or then afterwards your coach, your mentor will explain it to you. And that's the way I've grown super fast. I went from like a newbie instructor in one company to the number 4 producer in the company, because I did that with the top team. They asked me to do stuff when I was going through training. The top guys, Mike and Ted, they were like, Hugh, go do this. I did it. I didn't ask any questions. I just did it. Just like in sports, my coach said, go do that. I did it. Right. And
learning by action.
Yep. Learning by action. And then afterwards, you can ask the question. Right. And half the time your questions get answered through the process, but so many people get stopped with like, why should I do that? Oh, that doesn't seem like, that's too low for me to do. It's like, no, if the top people are asking you to do something, you do it. That's how you're going to prove your value. And then they requested me to go out all the time with them. If one of them couldn't make it, I was the sub. This is out of 30 people. I'm the low man on the totem pole, but yet I'm subbing in for the number 1 team. Why? Because they could trust me. They knew I would do whatever role. I didn't have an ego in it. We put the ego aside. And that happens with your mentors too. If you give them a lot of friction, your mentors, they don't want to do work with you anymore. You cause them stress. They're like, whew. Like, why would I give you the assignment versus somebody else that'll just go and get it done? I don't have to ask 20 questions. Correct. So you got to think about it from their perspective. If they're they're the 1%, they're making the top income. They just want people to get stuff done. You prove you get stuff done. Then they'll spend the time coaching, training you, showing you the steps on why you did that. And that's the fastest way to grow. Somebody that's already been there and done that.
Absolutely. Now, Hugh, we have a few more minutes left. Is there any words of advice or anything else you'd like to share with our listeners that I haven't asked about?
I think one of the big is just to go ahead and take your shots, and the shot could simply be reach out to a new mentor coach, reach out to somebody new. Just to follow up on that analogy, the difference between Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Caitlin Clark, and every other basketball player, and Steph Curry, is they take more shots in practice, not in real life. And it's what we do in practice that gets us ready for the games. People ask like, Hugh, how do you get on those stages? I'm like, I'm constantly talking to people. I'm constantly doing things. So when I get asked to go on the stage and they're like, you got 10 minutes, or you got 30 minutes, or you got 45 minutes, or you got 3 days, I'm ready. It's not like, okay, now I got to get ready. Now I got to get there. And so if you're not taking the shots, and what that could be for you, making phone calls, that could be talking to people. I don't know what those shots are for you, but take, 3 to 5 shots every day and you're ready. Michael Jordan took 1,000 shots a day. Steph Curry takes 500 shots a day. That's why they are the best shooters in the game. Because they took so many shots after practice when the rest of their teams went home.
Right. Practice makes perfect. Isn't that adage is.
It also builds confidence because you've already handled those situations, right? You've already handled those situations. So when I was going out speaking 3 days a weekend for 5 straight years, like everybody's like, well, how do you know what to do on stage? It's just like, we've run through every scenario, every situation. You've handled it maybe poorly, but you've handled it. And now you're ready for to handle it in a better way. So it's just putting yourself in the arena, as they say, right? A lot of people like to criticize the gladiator, but if but only the gladiators really know what's going on and how they would do things. Everybody from the sidelines said, oh, I would have done this, or I would have done this, and stop listening to the people chirping in your background.
Right. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. We definitely learned a lot from your nuggets of wisdom, and we hope to have you back on the show. Thank you very much.
Awesome.